memories and bonds with our families, with our friends. We kept video links open during the games. We shed tears, of joy, tears of sadness, but we had unbelievable moments. Grandparents to grandkids, parents to kids, brothers and sisters, friends. We kept phone lines open. We'll never forget, the memories that were made. Please thank the team. Thank everyone for us. And it's unbelievable how uniform they were. And it spoke to the power that when you think about giving your life to working in sports, you do so for the moments that you think you might be able to lift a community. But you never imagine what it could mean to lift a community coast to coast. Not just to raise spirits, but to unite people. Not just to give people a reason to cheer, but to give people a reason to feel better about everything going on in the world right now. And for a period of time, it was an affirmation of every reason you work in sports. And then even better to me is when you read deeper in those emails or listen to the comments walking along the street, it was what people recognized about this team. Because I can tell you, having been involved with winning teams or having friends at work in a variety of sports, fans cheer winning regardless of who's on the field. They like to win. Everybody likes to win. But when you hear everyone uniformly pointing out the same attributes and characteristics and traits that we work so hard as an organization to instill, when they notice how authentically a group of teammates love and care for each other, when they notice how genuinely those players want for the fans to win, like genuinely and deeply want it for our fans to win, when they recognize their toughness, this is a group that it's tough to have your back against the wall. This is a group that almost savored having their backs against the wall. They had to win 4 in a row, the last 4 games of the season, to win a very pivotal AL East championship that was meaningful to the stretch run and the postseason run. They had their backs against the wall 0-2 in the ALCS, multiple elimination games, and they always responded. And they noticed that toughness. They noticed that grit, that resilience, that determination, and ultimately what it meant to be a teammate. So it wasn't just that the team won, it was how they won. It wasn't just that they were the players in the field as they accomplished some championships and great things. It was what they stood for as they did it. And ultimately, you could watch them play the game and everything else around the game and know what their identity was as a team and know what our identity was as an organization. And I think each of us throughout the country saw us in them. They saw the things that inspired us, the things that lift us, the reasons to believe, the reasons to feel belonging and a part of something. And as I sought to move forward, my overarching sentiment was one of gratitude. First and foremost for our players and our staff for the unbelievable and exceptional effort they gave throughout the entire season, for the expectations they exceeded. No one expected them to do what they did, and for their belief in each other and for the fans they played for. Secondly, for our fans, they were truly an extra player for us. They lifted us. We felt their support from coast to coast across the country. Third, for the organization, it takes exceptional efforts, not just strong efforts, throughout an entire organization, from people working in anonymity down in Dunedin, rehabbing, to people cleaning the concourse and making sure our systems work in this massive ballpark throughout an entire season, to people selling tickets, to people doing analysis of pitch data, to people rehabbing players. It's an entire organization recognizing that their work is not just meaningful, but essential for us to achieve high levels of success. And finally, to Edward Rogers and Tony Staffieri for leading an ownership group to an exceptional, unprecedented level of support, commitment, and belief this year, but I think even more in past years when maybe the success wasn't as easy to see. That's when it was most meaningful. So I moved forward. It's not easy to do. It's hard to do. I mentioned to Andrea on the walk down, as we walked by the field, I hadn't looked at the field since Saturday. I haven't spent a moment. I don't think I couldn't look at the field, and I looked out there today. But it's with the rearview mirror on that inspiration, on that gratitude, on that understanding of the ability and potential to lift our community of Canada, that I walk away inspired and recommitted to resume the pursuit, with greater determination, with more resolve, and even more committed. So I think that's how I wanted to start today. That's a very genuine set of feelings. They're a little bit raw, a little bit emotional, but I'm incredibly grateful is really how I feel today. So with that, we can turn to some questions.
Thanks, Mark. Keegan, we'll begin with you.
Mark, when you look at the 2025 team, which traits do you want to hold on to most as like a team identity that can shape how you approach your offseason?
Oh, I think toughness and togetherness are kind of, if I had to sum it up, for me, I think that within toughness is, the character and determination and perseverance. But I don't view these things to be new. I think sometimes they maybe show up differently, but it's never one season's efforts. And I think last year's, even with the challenges and adversity and setbacks we had last year, that's a part of who we are today, without a doubt. So you look to learn and get better, but I think the affirmation that identity and that what it can mean to be an elite level of teammate, that high level of caring for each other, would be something that would be important for us to continue to carry forward.
How do you expect the World Series run and this success to open more possibilities for you in the offseason, whether that be just from how the organization's viewed or possibly financial?
Yeah, I mean, this being on that stage is exactly what it is. I mean, you're on the biggest stage. So I think that what may have been known throughout maybe smaller circles in the industry is now known by the world, which is this is a world-class city, an incredible place to play. It's the best ballpark or one of the best ballparks in all of Major League Baseball. We care deeply about our players. I think that their families and wives have been testament to that over the past week. So I think what's clear is it's a great place to play. I think we also saw the business success that can come, achieving at this levels. And we'll work to continue to capitalize on that moving forward as well, because that ultimately supports a payroll that is a championship caliber payroll.
Shai, to your left.
Hey, Mark. Somewhat similar to Keegan's first question, but what elements of team building this year can you take and use to make sure this is replicable? What elements of this season are replicable year after year?
Well, I think that there are identity traits and culture traits that if they're present, if they're deeply woven within an organization, and again, I don't view those to be short term. I think those are efforts from our baseball operations group led by Ross over multiple years, and the identification of talent, the acquisition of talent, the development of talent at the player development level, and the ultimately a building of a team. And I think if the power of having those play out on this stage is that it's more clear to everyone how important they are without having to say it. And I think players that value those things as well gravitate towards it.
And given all the impassioned things you said about your experience here, is there any update on your contractual status at this point?
Just that we agreed to put that on hold during the postseason run, just in light of not wanting it to be a distraction. But the same things I've said in the past, there's a desire for me to remain here and a desire from Tony and Edward to keep me here. So I think we'll likely work something out soon.
Gregor?
Mark, I think everyone would agree this was the special group that you guys had this year. So as you look at trying to replicate that next year, how do you balance trying to make your roster better, dealing for potential regression in some areas versus also wanting to reward the guys who got you this far this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll answer that maybe universally, but it's a better question for Ross when he's up here in a half hour. I think you're always, as you go into an off-season review, you understand that there were some performances that were aberrations, maybe on a good side, some that are where you expect some regression. But that you never go into a planning cycle, which is what Ross is leading our group through right now, in the process of leading our group through, without some understanding that you just can't recreate something identical. You know, you've got to build off of what happened, you know, which is a positive. Use that as a platform, but know that you have to plan to be better, because it won't work exactly the same way next year as it worked this year.
And then almost further to Shai's question as well. I mean, you guys have had a payroll for the last couple of years that was already very high. Do you have the ability to go even higher this offseason because of the deep run you guys went on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's yet to be determined. You know, I think that starts with the work that Ross is leading our group through now, which is kind of understanding what potential roster building looks like and where the alternatives lie. What I think is clear is that, you know, we've had an unprecedented level of support, and I don't see that support going backwards at all.
Rosie?
Mark, how crucial, and I'll ask Ross this as well, but we're talking big money here, so how crucial is it to bring Bo back, if you in fact do think that it's crucial? And then I have a supplementary.
Yeah, I think my comments on Bo are more just appreciation for what he's meant here. You know, it's more appropriate for Ross to comment on what, you know, he'll mean going forward. You know, as I reflected on his ability and toughness and desire to be on the field in the condition he was in during the postseason, and his ability to still provide some of the most important lift, you know, in the World Series, but that was only, you know, the explanation point on what's been an unbelievable career here. And the fact that I can remember him at his pre-draft workout, you know, my son shagging fly balls as his dad was throwing BP to him, and our scouting staff, you know, on field 1 in Dunedin, Florida. So I can remember back to him being a high school senior in the pre-draft workout. So it's been you know, he's been a special part of this organization and a special part of us building towards this. And he certainly, you know, makes our team better. So as we go through the off-season planning, I'm sure that'll be factored in.
Do you believe in the concept of franchise players, and can you have more than one?
That's a good question. I mean, again, speaking globally, yes, there are franchise players. You know, franchise players contribute in all facets, are leaders, you know, members of the community. There's a bunch of different components to that, and obviously are very talented as well. And I think it, you know, there's obviously financial realities that come with that, but the possibility for multiple franchise players in a market of this size certainly exists. It always creates challenges elsewhere in building a roster, because you start to concentrate payroll in just a couple players. But again, I think those are recommendations that, you know, Ross will lead our group through, and ultimately I'll discuss with ownership at the right time.
Rob?
Mark, many of the platitudes that we're hearing about this team right now are directly related to the vision that you've been talking about for a number of years. Making it a great place to play for families, having players come here to appreciate what the city and the country can offer. And it seems like almost everybody on this team responded to that. How much gratification do you guys take as an organization to sort of see the fruition of that vision?
I mean, I think you're never done thinking about that, but, you know, I've often said, when people say, like, what's your why? I say, to make this the best place to work and the best place to play, you know, and there's a lot of things that fall underneath that, and the outcomes of that are hopefully winning, you know, at the highest levels. And ultimately, I think I would say this, Rob, whenever your players are kind of saying things organically and naturally that you believe deeply in, the values more than anything, their love and care for each other, you know, their belief in what it means to be tough, their appreciation for our fans, that is gratification. You want to hear the players naturally say those things without being coached to say those things. But yeah, I think that also has power, because the industry hears that, and I think that's meaningful to us.
You mentioned it, and you certainly sounded a little emotional at the top today. If and when you're able to distance yourself from Game 7, how great was that theater? How good of a ball game was what all of baseball witnessed that day?
Yeah, I'm not willing yet to think about it in that light. I think I recognize, I've always kind of, you know, with the position I've had since I was president in Cleveland, I've always kind of said I need to have two hats. One hat's just caring about the game of baseball and Major League Baseball and trying to make that better, and the other is relentlessly caring about the team I work for and trying to get them to win a world championship. And there's a small part of me that knows that for Major League Baseball and for the game of baseball, that series was a good thing. You know, it was an unbelievable heavyweight bout, you know, of just two great teams, you know, going back and forth. And, you know, any number of moments within that series could have tilted it the other way, not just one, you know, not just a couple. So it was incredible. I think when you start to listen and read the comments that, you know, I think we definitely created millions of new baseball fans in Canada, which I'm most interested in. But I think we created new baseball fans everywhere because that was compelling. It was compelling and hard not to watch.
Greg?
Hey, Mark, over here. There seemed to be a lot of people that were under the belief that Shane Bieber would have opted out of his player option for next year. And I think, obviously, it seems like it's a good thing for the Blue Jays that he decided to accept that player option. Was there any indication as to why he made that decision? You talked about the culture and the way the players love to be here. I'm wondering if that factored in, or is there contract negotiations?
I don't want to guess at his reasons because it happened, you know, pretty quickly, and so I just know we're better for him having made that decision, and it's a great start to our off season.
And is the team looking to maybe extend him?
Again, I think that's the process that Ross is working through now, is just kind of establishing an off-season plan. So it's not something we've worked on yet.
Mike?
Mark, when we all gathered around Chris Bassett in the clubhouse after Game 7, when he was able to compose himself, because he was really emotional, he talked about this whole unique cohesion and love and playing for each other. But he said that when he got here, he doesn't know that he was ready for this. He didn't think Bo was ready for this, Vlad was ready for this, all these people. And I'm wondering if I know you can't get into his head, but when you see the last 3 years and what has built, is it about setting aside ego? Is it about coalescing as a team? Is it what sort of thing have they grown into since Bassett got here to now?
Yeah, I haven't spent much time kind of considering that. I do think that certain events throughout a group's development together kind of become the catalyst that create their identity. And this group, whether it was maturation of young players into kind of understanding what their roles are, whether it was veteran players being solely focused on winning and just passing on the wisdom and experience that they've got, it was the right recipe and combination of kind of every segment of the player population. Young, you know, coming in like Trey and just out of nowhere and, you know, just giving you the upside. You know, players in the prime of their career like Vladdy and Bo and Ernie and you know, Himmy to some extent. He's still kind of young. He's actually still young, but kind of giving you stability of strong performances. And then veteran players like Bass and Schurz and so many others that, you know, and Hoff, that just kind of give you the wisdom and the understanding of how you win. So it's hard to put your finger on kind of what that, you know, what that he was referring to or what that means. But I do think that there's a growth of a group together, and, you know, and there's an organic process that occurs that establishes their identity. And these guys, for whatever reason, you know, I point to that toughness and togetherness. Like, they had a toughness that they accomplished things that were improbable. They excelled with their backs against the wall within games and within a season and within a postseason. And they did that with just a high level of caring about each other too, and with selfless, you know, no focus on ego or credit or any individual star or player kind of, you know, being at the center of it.
And on a personal note for you, in your over quarter century in the game, having gotten here to a Game 7 of the World Series and even like beyond the ninth inning of a Game 7 of the World Series, were there things about this that surprised you, that took you aback, that you weren't expecting to either see or feel or experience about a run like this?
The worst part took me back, by the way, because the last time I was in a World Series, we blew a lead in the 9th inning of Game 7 and went to 11 innings and lost in the 11th inning. That was 1997. That's hard to believe, right? Very different. And I was a farm director, not a president, but very different. I think it's more the things off the field, Mike, that kind of took me back, and that is the opportunity to share it, the opportunity to bring people with you, the opportunity to provide joy for people that care about you, and joy for people that you've never met before. I wasn't thinking about that coming into it, and I wasn't thinking about that, 25 years ago or whatever it was when I went through it. I looked around me and I had, 30 family members and friends from kind of all different aspects of my life, with me. And I made the determination early on that I'm not going to, shy away from that. I'd prefer to watch the game alone, by the way. But I wanted to share, I wanted the people I care about most to be around me, and that was meaningful. And then as I started to be more open and aware, recognizing the millions of people that we were impacting and lifting, I don't think I'd ever given thought to that. You get so focused on just doing the job that you forget the impact it's having. And then you start listening and hearing, and it was overwhelming to kind of hear, like, my wife passed away this year, and this gave me and my kids an unbelievable, unifying nightly ritual, to hear the sadness at just not having a game to watch tonight, Be nice if they didn't end at midnight, but not having a game to watch tonight, So yeah, I think just the power of kind of lifting people and bringing joy to the people that love you most and people you've never met before would be the things that kind of stand out.
David?
Hey, Mark,
Back one.
what are your
To your
thoughts? What are your thoughts on the job John Schneider did down the stretch and in the postseason? And then, as a secondary question to that, do you have any clarity on his contractual status beyond this year?
Yeah, that's the second part's a question for Ross. The first part, Schneid's, I think I said this, in the the few times a year I speak, and I think kids have the exact same comment, which is he keeps getting better. That's a pretty good sign for leaders, right? When they continue to stay open-minded, learn, and get better. He's certainly put himself at the top, among the top group of managers in the game, and led us through some tough moments this year, and was at the helm for some great moments, and he continues to be a factor and make us better. So,
And then you mentioned cohesion and toughness of the players. What kind of role did you see Schneid's in contributing to that?
I think that's not one person's role, and again, I think we're focused on collective success and not, giving credit to one person. That goes back to scouts, front office executives that help identify players and acquire players. That goes back to a player development staff at every rung of the ladder, from Dunedin to Vancouver to New Hampshire to Buffalo, and every single step of the way. And that goes back to an entire Major League coaching staff that kind of helps to mold that team together. Those attributes don't get instantly kind of come together and we'll put some magic sprinkle dust on and that happens over years, throughout either drafting, signing, trading, and then developing players, and then with Ross and our baseball ops group building a team.
Griff? Sure.
Mark, you extended a qualifying offer to Bo, which is obviously just a placeholder. He's waited this long for free agency. Is there a shoulder shrug in the front office to let him explore and then go after him and negotiate term and dollars?
Again, I think we're just starting to kind of put together an off-season plan, and that'll be part of an off-season plan that when Ross is ready, he'll address. There's no shoulder shrug when it comes to players like Bo, though.
Also, the early season signing of Vlad, how much of a positive impact did that have within the clubhouse and around baseball?
It's hard for me to say. Certainly was a positive, certainly took away what could be a distraction. So I think that maybe eliminating a negative, maybe more than anything. But I'm sure it also was a positive for Vlad, to not have that distraction as well, to his own performance and to his own peace of mind, and to his ability to lead and impact our players.
Could he be a generational player at some point?
I feel the same way I felt last year. He has a chance to be a generational player. Yeah.
Mitch?
Mark, we often see the league kind of react to success stories of specific teams and how they kind of try to build in the future. Do you feel like this, from talking to people around the league, could be one of those teams? And if so, what kind of traits do you think the rest of the league will try to replicate from this team?
Yes. Can you, the first part, Mitch, can you just say again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we often see, like, I'm thinking 2015 Royals,
Yeah.
2016 Guardians, like teams react, the league reacts
Right,
to specific
yeah.
teams.
Like our contact, is everybody going to look at? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just part of the sports industry in general, right? Like a narrative gets written based upon an outcome, and people try to say, what parts of that can we learn? Good, executives, good organizations are trying to stay ahead of that, always thinking about where the opportunities. By the time they react to it, it's probably too late, because then you're competing with everybody else for the same talent. I'd like to think that some of the things that happen here are not quantifiable. They're not analytical. They have to do with kind of the parts of the game that are still beautiful, because they have to do with makeup, character, chemistry, culture, those kinds of things, which are hard to quantify. The pieces of where that toughness kind of manifests itself in the way we play, the defense, the tough top to bottom lineup. I'm not sure there's secrets there. It just came together with this group, incredibly well. So, again, we've been criticized for the defense, the great defense in the past. This year, it was a big part of our identity. So I think a lot of different things have to come together. I'd like to think that there'd be some things that would serve as an example for others to kind of build off of, but, we can't rest either. As I said earlier, we're going to have to keep, to Gregor, we're going to have to keep working to get better and build off of what we happened this year.
Ben?
Hey, Mark. Dialing back the clock a while, probably not a lot of people, myself included, would have anticipated a World Series run for you guys. What do you think was missed, if anything, as far as what this team was capable of going into the season?
I think probably just putting too much weight into the outcome last year. Not to say that the outcome this year, is something that anyone would have anticipated, but there is some randomness that happens within a season, and we and our baseball ops group did some serious soul searching and made some changes and sought to learn from last year and get better. Those things, I think, made a massive impact and made us better this year. But the group of players, were still good. A lot of the individual performances last year were still indicative that we would be better. So, credit to Ross and our group for not panicking, for not feeling that we had to blow it up and start over. They believed in the plan. They believed in the group we had. They made some adjustments, which you always need to do, in both how we use that talent and in some of the surrounding players, and we got better. And, it's always interesting, that difference between wins is never quite as big or enormous of changes as you would think. A bunch of little things can make a big difference. So, it's not, I can't give you an exact answer, but I think that's probably the best answer I can give.
We'll go to Nelson. Straight ahead.
Hi, Mark. Two of the biggest signings the past offseason were two Venezuelans, or Jimmy and Tony. Can you talk about Jimmy's first season and reflect on how he grew? And obviously, Tony's kind of counterpart, which was like a very unfortunate season with a lot of injuries, and how can he impact the future of this team next year?
Yeah, I think Jimmy, what we saw in postseason was him at his absolute best. He impacts the game defensively and on the bases, which we already knew. The upside for him, it's a great floor because he's an elite player on those two facets, no matter what. The upside for him is offensively. I think the injuries he dealt with this year, which kind of interrupted his season at multiple junctures, probably prevented him from doing that. But he's a high character player. I tend to forget how young he is because he carries himself, in such a mature way, and but certainly feel fortunate to have him. He's a big part of that what Ben talked about, and part of that change from this year to last year. And Tony, you know, we just need to get him healthy and back. You know, there's a guy a year removed from 40 homers, and, you know, he's also a high character guy and a strong leader, but he has to be on the field to do that. So
We have time for a few more questions. Brandon?
Mark, I'm just wondering, on a personal level, how did you deal with Game 7 that night and in the following days?
yeah, I mean, hug my daughter and hug my son, you know. I actually, like, you know, I did a lot of self-talk before the game philosophically, like, hey, you know, just on a deeply philosophical level, right? Like, I'm not going to be any more complete of a human being. I'm not any better of a leader or better person if we win, and I'm not any worse if we don't. My life is no more complete or no more incomplete. That's never been about the celebrations for me. It's been about the pursuit. It's been about perpetual improvement and about, you know, lifting people and making this a great place to play and the best we can do for our fans. In that moment, there's a bitterness to know how close you got, because you know what it could have meant to so many other people. So I guess I just attempted to make sure that any bitterness I felt wasn't about me or, you know, my ego or my accomplishments or my, you know, track record. It was okay to feel it as it pertained to disappointing others, and then to quickly work to turn that disappointment into resolve, you know. And yeah, I think the only way for me to find kind of comfort and solace was in resuming, you know. So I took a day, you know, and then Monday I was back in here, and it's back to work. You know, we need to get back to work. We're already deep into the off season. So
What did you do on Sunday then to maybe, I guess, get your mind off?
walked my dog, you know, got outside because I just felt like I hadn't done that. I slept more than I'd slept in a long period of time once I was able to get to sleep, which wasn't easy. You know, spent some time with my kids before they left and flew back, you know, being around them, you know, centering for me. And then just kind of take some time to do the things I hadn't had time to do, like exercise, read, you know, things that kind of, you know, in the midst of everything we're going through, kind of slip away.
Lindsay?
Hey, you may say this is a question that Ross will have to answer, but we'll
Yeah.
see. There's a report out there that Don Mattingly will not be returning next year, if you can confirm that. And just in general, how you saw him impact this roster in the clubhouse.
Yeah, definitely one for Ross beyond me saying that, you know, Donnie, you know, is just a role model of humility, professionalism. My impression being around him on a daily basis, and I've known him for a very long time, of being around him on a daily basis was just, it's, you know, there are certain people who David Bell's similar for me. You just, when you talk to him, you forget what they've accomplished in the game because their level of humility is just so incredibly high. Donnie's one of those guys. I mean, he's a borderline Hall of Fame player, you know, one of the great modern, you know, Yankee players, and he's also managed and done so many other things. His knowledge of the game is so elite, but he never bludgeoned you with any of that. You know, he just was someone looking to help make us better every step of the way. And beyond that, Lindsay, I'll let Ross comment.
Our final two questions, Sean and then Shai.
You talked a lot, excuse me, you talked a lot about that moment off the top, you know, where it really occurred to you what was going on around here. Do you have an on-field, in-game moment where that same thing happened?
I mean, I think I don't know if it's the same moment. There are probably a few moments that I will always remember. One will be the second time in my life I heard silence at Yankee Stadium. You know, I kind of gave you that comment earlier, but I felt the same in 2007, but one of the best sounds I'll ever hear in my life, you know, like that. I stick to that, by the way. Just the genuine moment of joy after playing such a good series and knocking them out, you know, they were a good team, man, you know. And then maybe just reflecting on the AL championship and the fact that we were down 2-0, we faced elimination games twice and came back and won that series. I think that was kind of a snapshot of our season. You know, that series was a snapshot of our season. And that Yankee team and that Mariner team both were great baseball teams. You know, obviously the Dodgers were as well. It didn't get any easier, and that's what postseason should be. But we didn't have an easy path to get to the World Series. We had to beat two really, really good teams, and just throughout that time, what I think shown was just who we are. What made this team and this season possible was on display, and it's how we won those series.
And we'll wrap things up with Shai.
Mark, at the end of spring training, when we talked, you had described this season, because of where things were from a contractual standpoint, control and players, things of that nature, as this season as an inflection point for the organization. The end of it, Vladdy's obviously extended longer term. You've had this run. Where is this franchise right now in terms of a window moving forward?
It's hard for me to characterize that. I think I need a little more time. I need to probably see what, our strategy for the off season moving forward, but we're certainly in a better position. We had a good year, another good year, back-to-back player development wise. We really made some progress in the system. Obviously, reaped the benefits of a draft far faster than we ever imagined we'd reap the benefits of a draft, and had the biggest stage possible to showcase, our city, our ballpark, our organization, our team, to the entire baseball world. So those things will all be building blocks for us moving forward.
And just from a bigger picture baseball perspective, with the end of the CBA coming up a year from now, certainly some things floated by the commissioner in terms of different economic structures as a possibility for the future. Any potential impact of what down the road could look like on how you guys may operate this season to not be stuck in a bad place for a potentially different economic baseball world?
Yeah, we'll continue to plan with the system in place, because that's the only certainty we've got. I'm obviously privy to all those conversations, and at some point, if we move past conjecture into certainty, we'll adjust to the system that it changes to if that happens.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back at 2 o'clock with Ross Atkins.
worked so hard towards that cohesion that turned into a style of play that turned into wins, was very exciting to see, and seemingly connected with our fan base in a way that was powerful and something that we really appreciate. That support from the fan base was incredible. We talk about it all the time as we travel and see the impact of this nation impacting the Toronto Blue Jays, but to see it in a very deep playoff run was remarkable and something that we are very grateful for.
All right, we'll get into Q&A. We'll start here with Ben.
Hey Ross, as the season wore on, or as the postseason wore on, Schneider sometimes mentioned once you guys, hear what George was playing through, you'll really, raise some eyebrows. Now that the season is over, are you able to share some insight into what George was playing through?
I mean, I think you guys had the bulk of it. I mean, that was, significant. You could see him grimacing through that, and I don't know how he does it. I really don't. It goes back to our first year with him when he had an oblique, and it was clear in the MRI we could see something, but his physical exam wasn't presenting in a way that suggested he was injured, and I think it just speaks to his strength and toughness.
So was it an oblique tear?
No, it was not a tear. There was, as it was reported, there was significant inflammation. The MRI wasn't showing an injury. Everything, it's about the total presentation and how they present in a physical exam, and then what the MRI reads. But his toughness he was able to overcome it.
Go ahead, Keeks.
Ross, coming off the success this year in the postseason, in which ways do you expect that to benefit you this winter, whether it be with perception of this team or financial?
You're speaking of financial, meaning support?
Supports or how the team's viewed around the league, how you think that this run can help you in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing. There's always been, since the day that I got here, that I don't want to position something too strongly, but suggestions around the difficulty of getting free agents to come here, and I think the industry, the league, the players know how attractive Toronto is, how attractive this nation is, and how attractive the organization is to play for. So it just always depends on the individual. There are players that don't want to play in California. There are players that don't want to play in Florida. There are players that want to be in an Arizona spring training. There's players that are much more attracted to Toronto. So we feel that every year we try to get better, and as we improve, we hope to become more attractive.
And then before we get to roster stuff, could you update us on John Schneider and if there's been a change in his contract going forward?
Yeah, we have picked up the option. That was picked up previously, and he and I are talking about the potential of that being longer. I mean, Schneid's has been unbelievable. He is, a clear leader in this organization, really, really good at his job, and very proud to be working with him.
Ross, you obviously had a special group this year, and you could probably go down and point a list of like 10, 15 players who kind of had career years. How do you go about balancing trying to improve your roster, maybe accounting for some regression in certain areas, versus also trying to reward the guys who kind of got you to this point this season?
Well, there's a process in place for that, depending on where guys are in their career, and we will certainly be respectful of how we reward that. And as it relates to repeating it, it's what I said at the start, very proud of the work that behind the scenes that goes into putting guys into positions to be as successful as they can be. And, a lot of credit to John Schneider and their staff to allowing individuals as a group to realize potential that is very special. And I do think that cohesiveness allowed for a style of play that allowed for that team approach to benefit individuals. And we feel that that's something that's sustainable, not easy to do, and it's something that you're constantly managing. And it's not just as simple as, we know we have to also acquire talent again and acquire different players to come into the fold. So.
And then with Bieber, I'm sure you guys were very happy to hear the news that he accepted the player option, is coming back. That appears to only leave you with one spot left in the starting rotation. You've got some pending free agents with Bassett and Scherzer. You've got Eric Lauer under control. How do you look at that final spot in the rotation when they're kind of like you're balancing maybe looking elsewhere, but also looking at the guys that were already here and there's only so many spots?
It's a very well thought out question that you gave some time to, and we're doing the same right now. We have been working on that for some time, and we'll continue to do it. And I'd rather answer that for you after we've completed that work. But do feel good about the free agent market and the starting pitching area relative to most years. It's a little bit better seemingly, and we'll get to work on the trade front as well. Have started that somewhat, but we'll have a little bit better answer for you in the coming weeks.
Go ahead, David.
Hey, Ross, further to the Bieber question, the industry saw that as a surprise that he chose to do that. And can you let us know what went into those conversations?
I mean, the conversations are pretty straightforward for us. It was the decision to stay here, which is a positive outcome for us. Shane was more than we could have possibly hoped for, and on a deep stretch coming off of that procedure was really remarkable what he accomplished. But speaking to his decision, I don't want to do, but we're very glad he made it.
Okay, and what's the status of Jose Barrios, and do you see him ready for spring training?
Status is good. Yeah, he's in a good position physically. He should have a completely normal off season and be ready for spring training.
Okay, we'll go to Jonah.
Ross, I'm just curious what the last few days have been like for you emotionally. Are you still grieving like many Blue Jays fans are, or have you been able to turn the page relatively quickly?
Well, I mean, like I said from the beginning, it wasn't the last out that we had envisioned, and I try to, as I feel the sting of that hangover that is lasting and still there, I just try to reflect on the good and think about the positive, because there was plenty of it.
Is that a sting that you imagine will endure for, maybe the rest of your career, or is it something that with enough kind of time and space and potentially future success can go away completely?
It's an interesting question. I can't imagine ever not having the vision of that last out and thinking about all of the success that got to that point. I think those are pretty cemented into my, just as I reflect on my career, probably will be pretty strongly cemented in there, but just with so much positivity and pride around it.
Go to Griff.
Ross, has there been any ongoing discussion with Bieber about a multi-year deal? Because if not, then when's the last time somebody took less than market value to stay here?
Well, not going to talk about ongoing negotiations or discussions around that. And the last time someone takes below market, I mean, I don't have a catalog of them, but they happen. It happens. Players like playing here, and happens across the industry where a perceived market value and what a player takes. It's just a complicated decision.
This organization values run prevention more than most organizations. That being said, you seem to have a better defense with Jimenez at short and Bo at second. Does that come into any look ahead to discussions with Bo?
We'll see. I mean, I think the great thing about our current alignment is we have flexibility beyond how it impacts Bo or how it impacts Hemi. We have multiple players that can play multiple positions, and that's a good starting point.
One last is, do you think that this World Series and the viewership and the impact in Pacific Rim and Asia is going to help you recruit over there?
That's hard to say. I think it's an attractive destination for the Pac Rim, and just happens to be 6 hours further. And I think that's maybe not quite as heavily populated as the west coast of the United States. So, but I don't think it's going to hurt.
Go ahead, Shai.
Hey, Ross. As the playoffs were playing out, and you guys were obviously the focus of the baseball world, what are you hoping other players noticed about your club, your organization during that time? What do you hope what their takeaways from what they saw were?
The cohesiveness, really, and that that starts with Schneid's and his leadership, and then our key players. So some of them have been here for a long time, and some have come and gone that haven't had an impact on that. And I feel strongly that impact goes all the way back to players before I was here, and that impacted Jose and Josh Donaldson, who then impacted Bo and Vladdy, and then Marcus Simeon and Matt Chapman coming into the fold, impacting them, and Ryu, and then Springer, now Gossman, and now the team that we have. So hopefully that just continues to happen, that we're learning from one another and getting better every day, and that long-winded answer getting longer, but that cohesiveness and the collective effort for players to play for one another is unique, and I feel something that our team saw the power of being here, and hopefully others appreciate it.
And previous off seasons, the areas of opportunity in the roster were pretty clear. You mentioned a little bit in different answers here about some of the flexibilities you have. Like, where do you see the clear needs, areas of opportunity, areas to address, places where this roster can get better specifically?
Yeah, still all the things that I said to Gregor. So, the Shane Bieber's decision helps get us off into started in an area where we do have several subtractions.
Go to Mitch.
Hey, Ross. I'm just wondering, is there any players who will need off-season procedures?
Who will need
off-season procedures?
Yeah, no, not as we sit here today.
And do you expect, we've heard about Donnie, but do you expect any changes on the coaching staff at all?
Well, we'll just try to get better, but no proactive subtractions or significant changes in roles, but we'll try to get better in any way that we can, and that is the first opportunity that we'll have to improve our organization. Not necessarily get better than Donnie, but now we'll have to work to fill that void.
So you will have a bench coach spot to fill?
We'll see. We're going to work through the best way to align our staff.
Go to Rob.
Hey, Ross, you've certainly been involved with Vlad's development throughout his pro career. How impactful was what he did in October?
Yeah, really. It was, how do I say, really impactful in a really significant way. It was incredible to watch the athleticism on every aspect of the game. The at-bats kind of spoke for themselves. He was just an absolute force offensively and a game changer as a defender. I can't imagine he could have made a bigger impact. I really can't.
Go to Rosie.
Hey, Ross. Once you catch your breath, what do you consider job one that you have to apply your mind to, and mine too, as well? And would that, I'll answer the question for you, would that possibly be Bo? And he has mentioned on several occasions that he's never been approached throughout the season by you guys to just open discussions, and I was wondering, it probably worked out the best for him, but why was that?
The Bo has already had a massive impact on this organization and our ability to win baseball games and on the fan base. really incredible, his performance, to think about what he accomplished in the playoffs on, you know, don't want to exaggerate, but, you know, certainly not at 100%. And, you know, not having full strength, not being at 100% of agility and mobility, and to still have that level of impact offensively and to make the plays he made defensively speaks to the competitor and the athlete that he is. And not just the competitor and athlete, but also when the lights were brighter, how that influenced and impacted him and how well he navigated that. So he's been important. We will be in his market, and as it speaks to the timing of the negotiation or lack thereof, really is coming from our respect from his right to get to free agency and having pretty much already earned that.
Back to Mike.
Hey, Ross, you've mentioned the free agent market and trade market coming up in this offseason. I was wondering philosophically what your thoughts are about running it back. I mean, we had so many players in there say they would love to play with this group forever, and they, you know, change is inevitable, but major change isn't necessarily inevitable. We all remember the 92 and 93 Jays had like 12 different players, team to team. What are your thoughts about bringing most of the same group back and seeing what happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's you open to that as an outcome. You have to constantly be thinking about getting better, and that is one way to you know, think about carrying on what has already occurred and improving upon what was good. But you just have to be open to other ways to doing it.
But philosophically, I mean, do you think it can work to run it back, or do you think there needs to be change to improve?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put myself in a box to say that there has to be change to improve. I believe in human beings. I believe in the you know, the power of development, improvement, and the power of cohesion.
And just a couple of questions for clarity from what you said. With the coaching staff, is everyone invited back at this point?
Yes.
And Lauer, at least when I spoke to him, seemed to be confused about his status and service time and whatever. Is he still absolutely under control for you?
Yeah, he has another year under contract with the Blue Jays.
Take our last one here from Gregor.
Ross, we asked Mark about a contract extension for him. We've asked you about a potential contract for Schneider. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have 1 year left on your deal. Have you had any talks about an extension for yourself with Mark? And if not, do you plan on them opening that dialogue with you in the near future?
I'm not going to talk about my contract. Great place to work, incredible people to work for, incredible experience. I have nothing but positive things to say about this market, this city, country, and organization. I could not be more grateful.
And then looking at next year's roster, is Jeff Hoffman your closer for next year, or is that an area you guys could look to address this offseason?
The great thing about Jeff is he's not married to that. He is me talking about that cohesion and that team approach. He epitomizes it. I think he would be open to anything that makes us better.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
We have